Hi, it's good to see you all again. Thanks, Jody.
Oh, no worries.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, I was doing the questions, but I'm going to do the whole thing, or you're moderating, or what's going to happen?
You're asking the questions and then I'll check and I'll keep an eye on the Q&A.
Got it.
And
We're set.
that's about it. Yeah, we have an hour and a half, so it's all good.
Yeah. How are you? I haven't seen you guys in a long time. A whole summer, right? Yeah.
Doing
Things
really
going
well. Yeah.
Good. Eric, are you still at Fort Miller?
I am.
And Rick, I know you're still at Alta.
I am. There's Harut.
Hi,
Hello.
Harut.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Welcome. I sent you the link.
Thank you.
You're
Thank
now
you,
logged
guys.
in as Rebecca Tenseth, Harut. You may want to.
Oh, sorry. You could change your name.
Oh,
We have the boys back in school, Cheryl.
oh, good. Where? Don't tell.
They're at Lone Star.
Oh, good. Good. That was a good choice.
Yeah.
I just keep shaking my head. It just can't be like this.
I
And it
know.
is. Yeah. Hi, Shania. I know you're out there.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. It looks as though, yeah, we have about 54 participants today.
Oh, cool.
So welcome. And my name is Jody. I'm the career counselor at the Career Development Center and also the career liaison for the Credential School of Education and Human Development. And today we have this wonderful panel of special education or education specialists, whatever you guys are using it interchangeably, teachers that are going to be talking about their experiences. And there's also an opportunity to ask questions in the Q&A. So definitely ask the questions in the Q&A. That's a little bit easier than doing it in the chat feature. So definitely try to do it in the Q&A. And then we're going to go ahead and get started. And today, the person who's asking all the questions is the wonderful Cheryl McDonald. So
Hello. Thank you, Jody. That's kind of you.
it's always a pleasure. So thank you everyone for attending, and this will be lasting until 5. If you have to log off, we will be recording this and it will be on our YouTube account. So let's go ahead and get started.
So panelists, wonderful panelists, will you do me a favor, please? And would you just first introduce yourselves? And then I'm very happy to ask you the first question. So Harut, how about if you start?
Hi, everyone. I'm Harut. I'm the 1st through 3rd autism teacher for Clovis Unified District at Young Elementary School. That's a SDC autism program.
Thank you. Darian?
Good afternoon. My name is Darian Medlock. I teach the middle school classroom here at our school, Creative Alternatives. We're a non-public service provider for several districts, specializing in emotional disturbance. So if you end up working in education long enough, your most violent students generally come to our school. It's the last sort of chance to work with students before institutionalization. So that's what I've been doing for the last 3 years.
Thank you. Eric?
Hi, I'm Eric Calderon. I teach 7th grade SDC, ELA, and co-teach here at Fort Miller Middle School with Fresno Unified School District.
Ms. Rebecca?
Hi, I'm Rebecca Tinseth. I teach at Alta Sierra in Clovis Unified School District, 7th and 8th grade, direct instruction math, and also study strategies.
Thank you so much for introducing yourselves, and thank you for being here. We appreciate it. I do want to tell the audience that these 4 wonderful people are recent graduates of Fresno State. They are alumni, and they've been teaching in various wonderful positions and are terrific educators. So listen and learn. Okay, you guys ready for the first question? All right. Describe the process of obtaining your first job. How did you apply, interview, and make a decision to go for that district? Anybody?
I'll take that one. Do we just,
Rebecca?
okay. So I was working at Clovis North in the athletic office. So I'm homegrown. I was an athletic secretary for 3.5 years there. And then I decided to go back and get my teaching credential. So as I was working there, I found that it's who you know, especially in Clovis Unified. I think in all the school districts, everyone kind of helps each other out. So I did apply through EdJoin to get my first job, but I also asked my coworkers, teachers, my boss, if they knew the supervisors or the learning directors where I wanted to apply and if they would reach out for me. So that's really important to use your relationships, friends, family, coworkers, because just a phone call will get you and can help you get an interview. Doesn't guarantee you the job, but it can get your foot in the door. So that's really important. Let's see, how did I make the decision where to teach? I have a 10th grader and a senior at Buchanan High School right now. So when the job opened at Alta Sierra 3 years ago, this is my 3rd year in the classroom, I jumped on it so I could be on the same campus with my kids.
Thanks, Rebecca. Gentlemen, would one of you like to answer?
I can go next. So for me, I kind of, I actually started subbing with Fresno Unified before I actually applied for a teaching position. I went through and found out that I was able to work under a preliminary credential. So this is my 5th year teaching now, but my first year I was under essentially an emergency type credential. And so I worked under a preliminary credential. I was offered the position with the district before I finished with my bachelor's degree. And so going into graduation, I knew that I had secured a position already, and I just had to kind of figure out the scheduling so that way I could work in the classroom and still go through the credential program at the same time. And so for me, knowing as far as choosing Fresno Unified, similar to what Rebecca has shared, she's homegrown. I'm also homegrown through Fresno Unified. I went through all through K-12 through Fresno Unified. And I just knew that this is where I saw myself. I even explored, and Cheryl knows this, I've explored other area before, even outside of the state, and it just was not the same. And so I came back home to Fresno. And so for me, it was really applying through Fresno Unified through their HR online system. They have their own program where they list their job descriptions and all their openings, and going through that route. Because I was on a preliminary credential, the district offered additional supports for me. So I was also required essentially to go through a pipeline program. So on Saturdays, I attended additional trainings to help me, especially as a brand new teacher who has not even went into the credential program yet. I was already taking courses to kind of help me with classroom management strategies and behavior management and so forth. So that was kind of my little route there.
Thanks, Eric. Darian, I'm going to also ask you the same question, since you have a very unusual and wonderful situation in a non-public school.
Yes. So I'm sure a lot of my answers will be a bit unorthodox, but effectively.
That's great. That's how it works, right?
Yeah. So in our program with Creative Alternatives, I actually started as an instructional assistant, and with our student population, there was this joke that there's a give it 3 weeks speech, and so for everybody when we're interviewing, our old principal used to tell us, hey, it may seem wild at first, it may seem scary at first, give it a couple of weeks. If you decide, if you start here, give it a couple of weeks, because it's gonna, you may see some things that maybe you never expected to see. I mean, I think that's a problem, just how isolated SPED can be. But then, so I mean, I gave it that chance. I already knew I wanted to go into special education, but I absolutely loved it. So I started as an instructional assistant in the middle school classroom, and it's literally the only classroom I've ever worked in. I gelled so well in that classroom that they kept me in there, implementing interventions with the students. And then they ended up promoting me from within. One of our teachers left very quickly. And so I became teacher of record, again, while I was, before I was really in the program on the STIP. Yeah, I absolutely loved it. I've been here ever since. But they were really great about, because it can be, there's such a high attrition rate with the more extreme, I think, the population of SPED. They really do focus on promoting from within here. And so I've had really great admin support all the way through the process.
Awesome, Darian. And y'all have just heard from 3 wonderful mild to moderate education specialists. So Harut, you're our only sole and wonderful moderate severe person here. Tell us about your story and why an autism classroom.
So I was an instructional assistant at Clovis Unified for about 5 years. So being autism was my first program, I immediately fell in love, and I knew in that year that I really wanted to become a teacher and not a psychologist, which is essentially what I wanted at first. But I just knew that I could make a greater impact that way. But I think when that time came, that 4th year maybe, that I was like, okay, I think I really want to start pursuing this. And then Clovis Unified had a grant that they were giving out to instructional assistants going into credential programs. And like Rebecca said, you know, people that you know helping you out. So once I knew that, I signed up for it and got the support I needed at the time, and kind of gave me that push to go for it. So I was teaching and going through the credential program at the same time. So like everyone said, EdJoin, going through that process and being homegrown through it, yeah.
And I will say to the audience that these 4 people are also willing to take risks. You stepped outside of what might have been a comfortable zone for you to take on this job, and we applaud you for that. And that is a wonderful way to find your niche, right? Okay, let me go to the second question, and Harut, I'll start with you. How did student teaching prepare you for having your own classroom? What advice did your coaches and faculty give you that you found to be useful in your teaching?
I think student teaching is necessary and needed. I needed it. I needed to go through that. I needed to not only see other people and other teachers on what they're doing, but also experience it for myself. I think no matter what, we're going to experience it. And truthfully, it's the best way that we learn. So why not through that, learn from your mistakes, be a better teacher once you start going through it yourself. Honestly, the best advice that I had gotten from my, instructors, coaches, everyone, was to take care of yourself through it and not forget that you aren't just a teacher. You're so many other things as well, and just to not forget that. I needed to hear that. I have said that to other people, and it's something so simple, but it just hits home. You're like, yeah, you're right. There are other things too, and I need to learn to let go. So.
Awesome, thank you. Darren, what about advice that was given to you during your student teaching?
Oh, wow. I think one of the biggest things that plays into what I do as far as interventions as well was my coaches did an excellent job of helping me to understand the balance between positive and corrective feedback. And that's a huge one that I think it can be really difficult to maintain a balance of while you're doing everything else you're doing in the classroom. But for example, Dr. Smith was my coach for the first portion, and she really did a great job of acknowledging strengths that you had as well as challenges to face. And it's always nice, we're adults, we're teaching, but it's nice to know what you do well in addition to what you need to work on. And I think it's, and I think that's an important thing as far as understanding that for ourselves, because, I had another coach who was really just corrective all the time. And with my fellow teachers here, it was kind of really affecting our morale. Like, okay, it just feels like we can't get anything right. It was all corrective. And I think that helped me to kind of understand and empathize with how we interact with our students and how that can just on a social emotional level impact the learning process, and just how much that can either lift you up or really bring you down.
Thanks, Darian. Eric, best advice you got?
I had an admin tell me, because actually, let me go back. My student teaching was kind of non-traditional, right? Because I taught while I went through the credential program. So I didn't really have the true student teaching experience where I had a master teacher in the classroom supporting me. And so one advice that I received was to really look at myself as a teacher, be my own second set of eyes in my classroom. So she encouraged me to record myself periodically and then go back and just watch myself, not to turn in the lesson to anyone, not to turn the video to anyone, literally just to be my own set of eyes because I was in there by myself. And so I would record myself, and my students got used to the camera being in the room, and I would just record myself, and I would sit during my lunch break sometimes and just watch a snippet. And I'm like, I missed this, or I forgot to do this, or hey, I did that pretty well. Like I corrected this, and learning to reward myself and praising myself for doing something right. Because a lot of times I'm very hard on myself, and even after a lesson, even when my university coach would come and give me reviews of my lesson, I would always try to find the negative in it, and she would be like, no, like you hit this area, you did this correctly, like stop beating yourself up, like start telling yourself and start affirming yourself that you are supposed to be doing what you're supposed to be doing, and that you're meant to teach. And then I had an admin also saw that I was very much overly invested, that I put my career before everything. And I have a family with 3 boys with special needs that really needed my attention. And my admin told me her quote to me was, your job is not your livelihood, right? Or I'm sorry, your job is not your life. It's your livelihood. It pays your bills. It takes care of what you need at home, but it is not your life. Your life is at home. Your life is with your kids. And she encouraged me to take that time, leave work at work, and be home and be present with your family. So
Great. And Rebecca, what about advice for you? Because like Eric, you also had a non-traditional path.
Right. So I did my first initial student teaching while working full time. And I didn't have the same, just like Eric, I didn't have the traditional student teaching. But what I did have is I had like the balance is what was recommended to me as well, which was awesome. But also just learning from the teachers that I had been, I would watch their classes. I would observe classes a lot and like take that information back to my classroom. And one of the things was always be flexible. And we learned this last year, especially when we had to teach online. Your classroom's not always going to go, your day's not going to always go exactly as you have planned out, and not to get overwhelmed by that, and to be flexible and to have a backup plan. Like always have some extra worksheets or something that you can just hand your students if something's happening that you need to handle right at that moment, so that the students don't know a difference. You in your head can go, wow, this is really going crazy. And the students think everything is just fine going normal because you just handed them another worksheet to do. So really it's about classroom management, I think was what I learned. That was the most important.
Great, thank you. Question, what's been most surprising to you about teaching? Darian?
Ooh, that's a tricky one.
Yeah.
I mean, in a positive sense, I think the power of relationship to impact learning, that's definitely one that growing up, you don't necessarily hear, and so I know in the SPED program in particular, we had a lot of professors who really emphasized that and focused on that. But it's really amazing how much rapport what the student can do, especially when you start dealing with social emotional needs, deficiencies, or behaviors that come as a result of relationship seeking or something. So whatever reason it is, but being able to establish that relationship and rapport and showing the student you really care is like the number one easiest buy-in for everything else you do, because first and foremost, you're showing the student that I am here for your best interest and I care. And so if there's an understanding of that, everything that happens in this classroom is for your betterment and because I sincerely care about you, everything, even the more challenging things, comes from a perspective of trust and straightforwardness.
Great, thanks, Darian. Harut? Any surprises for you about teaching?
I think that it is hard to unplug. I know it's building on what we talked about before, but I do believe that when you really do care, you're constantly thinking about it, and it could be a positive thing, but don't wait until the negatives start to show until you stop to kind of be like, okay, I need to back off a little bit, because we're always thinking about our kids. We're always thinking about the paperwork we need to do. We're always thinking about what we're going to do next. So it's just, I guess, time management is key. And I think if you don't live that lifestyle right now or don't have it down, it will hit you when you start teaching, but it's definitely doable and you will get it down. You just need time and know that it's okay.
Thank you. Rebecca, any surprises?
Well, gosh, kind of both what Darian and Harut said, but the one thing that kind of surprised me too is, you know, you're in the school setting where you do all your own work, and we do a lot of collaboration in the last year of the teaching credential, but it's really important and surprising to me how collaboration really does work and benefit you on a campus, and how important that is to take other people's ideas, and you don't always have to reinvent the wheel. Like, I will take lessons from online and make them my own, and I will take, you know, other people have done this for years and years before us, and you kind of take the best practices. So I guess best practices is really important to pay attention and to use from other people, and I think that helps with that work-life balance. But really just the importance of collaboration and how much that makes your day so much better and your classroom work.
Eric?
Yeah, I kind of building off what Rebecca said about collaboration. Like I think as a special education teacher, like we are sometimes left in our own island, and sometimes we feel like that, right? And what's been very surprising is that I've been asserting myself with the Gen Ed team and just saying, hey, like my voice is valuable too, and what I have to say is valuable, and the strategies that I utilize in my classroom benefits all students. And so really, like I'm shocked that we're not as assertive, like we're kind of pushed to the side, right? I was surprised by that we weren't as cohesive. But then once people are realizing, the teams realizing like, hey, this special educator like has some valuable input, like he's teaching grade level curriculum, or you know, doing the grade level content with the students and providing the scaffolds. Like, let me try that strategy with the students that are struggling in my class, and the amazement that they have to see that their success, and they're like, well, this kid doesn't have an IEP, so can I still give him that accommodation? Absolutely, right? And so it's surprising that there's still that disconnect that SPED, we're in our own world, when we are really here to support all students.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, Rebecca, we'll start with you on this one. What do you love most about your job, and what are your biggest challenges?
I love working with the students, really do. I love when they come to me and tell me they got a good grade, and they're so proud of themselves. So it really is that connecting, as Harut had said. That's my favorite part of my job. And contrary to most people, I do like the paperwork, because I did business for 25 years and I did sales. And so the paperwork side is not, that's an easier side to me as a second career teacher who came into teaching at an older age. So it does get better, don't worry. The paperwork is, I know, a big deal. And what challenges me, I think it would be putting the work away and going home to my kids and not wanting to work on that IEP or staying at work till 5 or 6 o'clock at night to make sure that my students are taken care of. So that work-life balance.
Yeah, that's a hard one. It's very tough. Darian, what about you? What do you love most about your job and teaching? And what are your biggest challenges?
Yeah. So what I absolutely love the most about what I get to do is that we get to show students that they can. And so with a lot of our students, where we're dealing with this extreme high anxiety outbursts for whatever reason, I absolutely love being able to help students break down those fears and adverse experiences, start with high probability things, and just show them that they can, and get them to a point where they, without even realizing it, they've done something that absolutely terrified them in a previous classroom setting. But then also showing them that, you know, helping to reframe that fixed mindset, I'm terrible at geography, into a growth mindset of like, wow, I just did this, maybe I can get better at this. Rebuilding that locus of control from an external one to an internal one, helping students to understand that, you know, they are responsible for their accomplishments just as much as they've in the past been beating themselves up over their perceived inadequacies. I love being part of that process that helps them to realize that they are more than they think they are. The biggest challenge for me is learning to trust my classroom support team and delegate responsibilities. If you've made it this far in your education career, anybody who's here, you've had at least one group project where everybody absolutely failed to carry their weight. And that is something that still impacts me to this day. And I have wonderfully competent people in my classroom. It's just one of those things where I'm just slowly making some progress. You don't have to do it all on your own. That's what you have a team for. Don't be afraid to ask for help. And I'm trying my best to get better at it. It's been a slow climb, but that continues to be my biggest challenge. Absolutely.
Harut, in a Montsevier classroom in particular, do you find any challenges that are different from what Darian and Rebecca just mentioned? And anything you love more?
Well, to start, yeah, the students, of course, love working with the students. There's a reason why all of us are here. And I think building that relationship, and it's not just students. Also, I do love working with families. One thing that I will say, just to add on, is to be genuine with families. Parents always know, and there's no way around it. So just please be genuine when you're talking to them. And it helps. You build trust that way. But to add on to the challenges, I would say it is parents as well, because I think if you really are caring and you're trying to do the best for each student who has different needs, each families who have different needs and expectations for their child, it does become overwhelming. And I think you just have to slow it down a little and just take it in and get to know each family, be genuine with them. Because that is tough, because one day you think you have something going down and the parent's going to ask for another request or another meeting. And I know that's going to be overwhelming, because we're like, what, another meeting? Why is this happening? It's okay. You're there for the parents. You're there for the students. That's our jobs. But I think we start to forget that is going to happen. Parents are going to come at you out of nowhere, and it's going to throw you off. But just remember, we're there to help. And I think if you keep reminding yourself that you're that connection right there, it'll calm you down. At least it does for me. So
Great advice. Thanks, Harut. Eric.
What I love most about my job, like I think it's consistent across the panel here. It's the kids, building those relationships, having those connections with students. I'm amazed. Like when I took the position for middle school last year, this is my second year in middle school, I was terrified. I was like, I don't want to teach middle school. Like they're bigger than me and they're scary. I saw myself in elementary. I mean, I came from TK kinder and then moved up to middle school. And so it was a big jump. And even now, I'm glad I made that move. I don't ever see myself going back to elementary because I'm just able to have different types of conversation with my middle schoolers and building those connections. And the kids that I didn't see all year last year, they're craving that connection still, that human connection. And they're coming and knocking on my door like, hey, you were my teacher last year. You remember me? And I'm like, I think so. I didn't get to see their faces. But it's just having those connections with our students. And I would say for me, the challenge is really like not having to worry about my kids, my students. Where I'm at, it's a very tough school. We have one of the highest homeless population rates. A lot of our kids are living in motels or in their cars, or in some kind of transition homes. And foster home, we have the largest population of foster youth at our school site in the district. And so it's hard not to worry about my students. Did they eat? Did they sleep well? Did just all their basic needs, did those needs get met? And so I'm constantly worried about that. And that's a big challenge because I feel like it takes up my energy, right? I'm looking to see the kid shows up today to school, like he's been missing for a couple days, and I'm constantly having them on my mind. And so I think the love for the students is, carries on to that challenge too, because we overly love them as our own kids, and we constantly worry about them.
Again, good advice. I'm actually going to jump around a little bit in questions. So let me ask this question of all of you. Can you talk about the dynamics of working with administrators at your school site? What kinds of support do they give you? What's the evaluation process? What works well for you? Who wants to start on that one? And your administrator's not here.
I can. If
Thanks,
anybody-
Rebecca.
Let's jump right in. So working with my administrators, so as a special education teacher, you have multiple administrators, at least in our district, and I feel like in most districts you do. You have your learning director or your person who's in charge of your curriculum, and you, and then you also have a program specialist who's in charge of your IEPs and your legal aspect of making sure that you're doing the paperwork correctly, and holding the IEPs and all of those things. So I work very closely with both of them. They're very supportive. I tend to go to my program specialist the most. She, in past years, we have a new one that we've had for about 1.5 years, but the one prior to as well. When I was a brand new teacher, she sat in on every single one of my IEPs with me. She helped me write my first 2 or 3 IEPs, go make sure that I had everything in line. And even took the notes for me so that I didn't have to take notes while talking to the parent and presenting the IEPs. So it's a really good working relationship. I would say use your administrators to your benefit. They're there to help you, and emails are a godsend. I mean, if emails going back and forth, and then you can document everything that you've asked or that questions that you had, you can refer back to them. If you need to remember that information, because over the summer, some of us try to forget about everything we did the year before. So let's see, was there another part of that question? Oh, evaluations.
Evaluation process.
So evaluations, we have 5 to 6 informal evaluations per year, where they just come in the classroom, they observe you teaching, and then 1 or 2 formal evaluations, where again, they just come in, they evaluate, watch you teach, and then you have like a 3-page self-evaluation that you fill out. And then they go over that, and then the admin fill out an evaluation form for you. And then you guys talk about it and pick 1 or 2 content areas that you want to focus on for that year. So it's not a scary process. It seems like it might be. And I think the first year I was a little bit worried about it, but everyone is so kind and knows that you're a first-year teacher, and they're there to support you and help you, because they want you to stay. They don't want you to leave.
Well, they find good teachers and they don't want them to go, right?
Correct.
Exactly. Darian, is it different for you in a non-public school?
Absolutely. And so, yeah, we're a very small school. We are 100% special education. And again, we're very, very small, about 60 some students at this point in time. And so we have, I report to our principal and our IEP specialist, and those are the 2 designations that we have for administration here. I am really fortunate. We have an excellent and accessible admin team here. I really appreciate, and I know I've heard horror stories at other schools, especially when admin really have no clue what's going on in special education, which happens sometimes. But everybody here has been through the trenches. They've seen it. They've had to make the mandated reporter calls and file the reports. And I absolutely appreciate that if I don't know what's going on, or if I need help with something, I can contact them, say, I don't know how to do this, I need help, and they will absolutely show me how. And so, especially in special education, just having such supportive admin really makes my job a lot easier, immensely so. As far as the eval process, our principal is pretty engaged as far as making the rounds on our very small campus. And so there's a lot of interaction between us on a weekly basis. There are a lot of informal evaluations come in for 15-20 minutes, see how things are going, what's working, what's not, things like that. And then there are usually about 4 formal evaluations where everybody lines up in the back of the classroom and watches the magic happen, and then provides feedback accordingly. fortunately, like things go really well in my classroom, and they are very understanding. I'm not going to get dinged for something that's out of my control, like certain student outbursts and things. And again, I think that understanding of SPED goes a long way. And then once a year, there is a sit down evaluation going over our expectations and various attributes that that coincides with our re-signing of our next contract.
Thank you. Eric, what's it like in Fresno Unified?
So for Fresno, so depending if you're at elementary or upper grade, you'll be evaluated by an administrator. So either vice principal, principal. At some other school sites, they have more than one vice principal or guidance learning administrators, GLAs, and they will be the one that will evaluate you. So for me at my middle school, I am evaluated. There's informal evaluations. They do what they call IPG, which is instructional practice guide walks. They walk through to make sure that you're following kind of the district's guideline for instruction, whether it's for literacy or for math. And they kind of just, it's very informal. It doesn't go as part of your evaluation, your formal one. They kind of make some suggestions if you need to make any changes. They do a few of those. And then we do before we have our formal evaluation, we do a kind of like a pre-conference. Let's sit down, let's set some goals. What do you want us to work on this year? What's your objective this year? What do you want to accomplish? So we create and come up with a SMART goal for ourselves, and then pick certain state standards, teaching standards that we want to make sure that we hit, that we address throughout the year. But we do that as a pre-conference, and then we schedule a formal observation. We do the formal observation, then we have to do a meeting after every observation. That's formal, that's documented. One happens in the first half of the school year, and then you do another one in the second half of the school year. So first semester, second semester, and then you do a summative evaluation at the end of the year that goes over everything, see how well you did with your SMART goal, and achieving those standards that we set at the pre-conference at the beginning of the year. In addition, going off the other question about working with administrators, there's different levels of administration. At the district level, we have program managers, we have our SELPA directors, right? But then we also have what we call RIMs, which is our regional instructional manager, similar to probably program specialist in Clovis. And our RIMs are the ones that really support us with change of placements, IEPs. My first year, I had an amazing RIM. She was like, let's sit down and write an IEP together. I'm going to show you how to go through that process. And I'm going to facilitate the IEP, and I want you to observe how it's conducted. And she did it a couple of times with me, and then she was like, okay, now we're going to switch roles. I'm going to be kind of the bystander, and I want you to lead this next IEP. And then so it was very like informal, like observation. She didn't report the notes to my admin like, hey, he messed up here, or he needs help in this. Like, it was like just kind of a coaching session. And then at my site, I've been thankful that at this site where I'm at now, my admin has a background as a special educator and really understands special education, and puts us first. Like, hey, gen ed teachers, whatever meeting you have, PLC meeting, like, you need to go to the IEP meeting. That's priority. We are pushing for inclusion here, so we do not offer RSP at our site. So our principals really pushed for all the students that would be pushed in or pulled out for services to get pushed in with gen ed. So I co-teach and I push in and I provide support in the classroom with the gen ed students. So students are not missing instruction. It's amazing to have that dynamic where admin just gets it, that gets our students, that gets how to support our kids. Like, you know, sometimes they get frustrated and they have a behavior, they shut down, and they're not just sent out at our school. Like, it's like, okay, let's peel the onion layer back and figure out what's the root cause to why the student is acting the way they are. It could be access to their learning, right? And how can we support that student? And so it's really helpful to have admin that understands. And if you don't have admins that don't have that background, it's, you know, I would say our job as special educators to invite our admins into our classrooms and say, hey, like, this is what I'm doing. This is how I'm supporting our students. And I need your support to make sure that they're getting the help they need around the campus as well.
Thank you. Harut, I'm going to give a different question to you, if that's okay. what do you wish you'd known about teaching when you were in the credential program? And is there anything you wish that you could have done differently?
I think being an instructional assistant, I kind of had an idea going in, but if going back to some of the things we talked about, I would say time management. I don't think I really understood what I was getting into. We know about IEPs, we know about planning ahead and doing all that, but man, once you start, you really have to go through it to understand how well you're going to try to be organized and what you need to do first. And there are a lot of times where you're going to have to take some work home. Unfortunately, that first year, that was rough. I didn't know. I didn't know how to plan my, because you care so much about being in the classroom and being attentive and obviously being there for everyone, not just your students, but also your IAs. And so that was hard on me. Time management, definitely. Again, you guys are going to be thrown off a little bit, even if you expect or anticipate something to go a certain way. But once you're in it, it's okay. You're going to go through it. You're going to be fine. There are some things you're going to have to go through first before you can learn. So, and then was there another question to that, Cheryl?
Oh yeah, the other half was, is there anything you wish you'd done differently? But I think you kind of addressed that.
Yeah.
Okay. Panel, what's your experience been like teaching over this past year with remote instruction or remote and face-to-face in a classroom together or in the classroom only? What's it been like for you? Harut, go ahead and tell us. Harut, are you there? There you go.
This is for the same question.
Well, it's for this question, but over the last year, what's it been like for you working remotely and probably also with your kids in classroom and some in one place and some in the other? What's it like for you for remote teaching?
So remote, I went strictly remote. I was the online teacher on our campus for our special education students because we have a autism continuum, SDC autism continuum. So I took that on because majority of my families were not comfortable coming back. I think before I had started, everyone was panicking. Our kids can't do it. Our families can't do it. It was just a whole bunch of negative expectations. But man, those were all wrong. Our kids knocked it out of the park. They did great. I think it was the parents who had the hardest time, as expected. But the kids were able to do pretty much everything. I think, being a special education teacher, you know how to accommodate things a certain way. You learn how to accommodate things a certain way so that it works for all the kiddos. Not all the kiddos were able to do the exact same thing, but if you accommodate to their needs, they will succeed. And I think they proved everyone wrong, and I was so proud. And I think, who knows, it could happen again and you might have to do things differently, but just know that, just stay positive. There's always a way around it. And it's more harder on the teacher, I guess, than anything else. The kids were able to handle it. It didn't bother them a little bit. So yeah, just be positive, you guys. It'll work out.
Darian, what's it been like for you over this past year? And have you had remote teaching in your non-public site, or were the kids still coming, or how did that work for you?
It was a double-edged sword. I got my first gray hairs during distance learning here. But yeah, March of, we went, like, as soon as COVID closure started happening, we went online, attempted to. It was really, really bittersweet. It was hard. For some perspective, our program is locally, it's one of the most restrictive environments. And so it is highly structured. And a lot of our students really need that to thrive and to function, and or a lot of our students don't necessarily receive that at home or their group homes. A third of my class ended up incarcerated for various reasons when they were no longer receiving the structure that our school program provides on a daily basis. And that was an extremely emotionally taxing thing for me. For a lot of my other students, a lot of my other students, it was fantastic. The students who wanted to learn and who were in a spot where they really wanted, we'd gotten to a point where they were ready to learn and they'd gotten past some of the previous barriers that were points of anxiety or emotional and physical outbursts for them previously. For a lot of those students, it was great because I was able to provide a lot more individualized instruction with smaller class sizes. And so we saw a lot of improvements in mathematics and reading comprehension scores. The biggest challenge for us, I think, being a non-public was that I really enjoyed the districts, but they did not want to pay us. I know funding was impacted and things like that. And but they wanted us to keep our students, and that's, there's a lot of complicated things there that kind of go above my head. And so we had to do a lot. We really had to fight to justify the services we were providing for our students. And there was a lot of additional paperwork and spreadsheets and just by the minute fine hair combing that needed to happen to make sure that we were able to continue to provide services and keep any jobs here at all at our school. So there was a lot that was great. There was a lot that was difficult. Yeah, we're back all in physical setting right now.
Well, let's hope it stays that way, right?
I certainly hope so.
Rebecca and Eric, for you, what was it like over this past year with remote teaching? How you've adapted to it? What's it look like for you? You're both in middle school, so it's probably going to look a little different.
For us, we started the year 100% online. We were over Zoom. So that was a little bit harder. My RSP pushing classes for 7th and 8th grade math, I was a support teacher. So it worked really well online if you had 2 teachers, because I could take kids into a breakout room and make it a small separate setting for them and help them more individually, which a lot of our students needed. But in my non-diploma track direct instruction class, it was really hard to get the kids to pay attention, to do anything. 7th and 8th graders who didn't have parents at home, so a lot of them were at home by themselves. We got to see into a lot of kids' households that we should never have to see into as teachers. We had a fire alarm go off and smoke come into a house. We had lots of connectivity issues because of different places where our kids live. And so it was very challenging to be trying to pay attention and teach while calling the counselor on the phone to say, can you call the fire department? Can you call to see, because there's smoke going into this boy's room and fire alarm's going off and I'm not, and then it went blank. So now what do I do? Because I'm not in the house, like I can't keep him safe. So it was hard to keep our kids safe while we were online. And that's part of what we're supposed to do as teachers. So it was a little bit challenging that way. I feel like most of them came to class every day because it was a safe environment for them to be at. We did a lot of social emotional lesson plans and talking and just an outlet to have some community together. And then when the last 6 weeks of school, we had some kids come back, but only about half my class. So then I live streamed. So then I had 6 kids in the class and I had 6 kids on Zoom online. The district was really great. We were able to have technology so we could have cameras and extra monitors and just different things. So we had a lot of resources to teach both sets of kids, but it's really challenging to try to pay attention to the kids online and see what they're doing and keep them engaged while walking around a classroom, trying to help the kids who are actually in person who haven't been out of their house in over 1.5 years. So now they're wanting more attention and wanting you to be closer to them, one-on-one instruction. So I'm very happy to have my kids back in the classroom right now.
Eric, what about you?
So we started the year 100% remote as well, and definitely had a lot of challenges. Our kids were joining class. We used Microsoft Teams as our learning software platform, and so we had kids had a lot of connectivity issues. Though our district did have Wi-Fi hotspots deployed out to households that needed them, they only had so much data available that they can use on it. And so we really encourage the kids to only use it for school. But even that, using that hotspot for Teams plus any other apps that we need them to get on, it really drained their data. And so sometimes kids would say, I'm outside the parking lot of McDonald's, or I'm near the school in the car, or outside of the motel room that they're at, closer to the Wi-Fi hotspot from their lobby of their motel that they're staying in, just to stay connected. And we had to kind of learn to say, okay, it's okay to like just keep your camera off, and I'll send you everything out. So a lot of times what I had to do was record myself doing a lot of lessons and say, watch it when you can. Here's the class website, go to the class website, watch it when you can. And then I would do with parents, what I ended up doing was I was realizing that I had to depend on the parents a lot during distance learning. So I had to really make them become my classroom para virtually. And so we did parent social hours every other Friday. And I had a Teams account for every family member, every adult in the household. And every Friday, 4 to 6 o'clock, we would have different topics we would talk about, whether it was about school, things that we were doing in the classroom, planning for the next week, or just topics of how they can advocate for their kids. But it was kind of a hangout for families in my classroom that I case managed. And that way, if their kid couldn't connect with us, that, you know, Monday through Friday, that they were able to still help their student on their own time. And so I would always like drop off materials. And that was a lot of it too, like trying to keep your distance, seeing the kid like in the window, like waving. And I'm like, I'm going to leave this at your door. Like, here's everything you need for next week. Just because I knew that they couldn't join us virtually. So I had to balance that, like make copies of things and have things traditional for them, but also make it available for students that were able to connect. We are now back in person 100%. And I'm so grateful for that, because I feel like I love technology and I'm a huge advocate for blended learning and having technology utilized in the classroom, but it doesn't replace everything, right? And not every student can learn through technology. And so having them here and being able to give them that choice to either choose to learn with technology or choose to learn the traditional ways has really, I feel like, increased engagement with students. Yeah, I'm just like, everyone's shared, like, I'm just glad they're here. I'm glad to see even with their mask on, like, I'm glad to see this face instead of like a black screen.
Yeah, I think we all agree with that. We're just missing people, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to do a quick whip around, and then we're going to take some questions from the audience. They're in the Q&A, and I'll read them to you. But first, I've got questions for all four of you. I'm losing my mind. I'm looking at 6 people on the screen, but I'm not looking at you. For the panel. So panel, what's the best advice you can give a student in the credential program currently? What would you want them to know right now? Either that you wish you'd known, that you've learned along the way, or just something you think would really help them to get them going, not just in their credential, but thereafter in their careers. So best advice you could give somebody. Eric?
I would say go for it. Like, don't be afraid to take those interviews. Don't be afraid to apply and put yourself out there, because if you bomb an interview, at least you know the type of questions another employer might ask. I can tell you, when I applied for jobs, I knew that I wanted to stay with Fresno Unified, but I took 21 interviews my first year before I made a decision, because I wanted to make sure that I felt like I was going to be the right fit for that school, and that school was going to be the right fit for me. And then when I narrowed down my choices, I decided to go sub at those sites, because I wanted to see how I was going to be treated as an outsider by the staff there. And so I narrowed down my choices, and then I subbed there, and I was like, okay, I really made a choice from there. And so just go for it. Don't be afraid to like take that risk and put yourself out there, because you never know which school site, which admin, which grade level you're gonna like fall in love with. Like I said, I always saw myself teaching elementary, and then I took this risk to teach middle school. And I've been advocating all my peers to move up to middle school, because I absolutely love it. And so just put yourself out there.
Darren, what about you? Advice?
Yes, absolutely. As somebody who thrives in chaos, I want to come back to what Rebecca said If you are not somebody who knows how to organize, grew up organizing, or is just privy to organizing, absolutely learn how to organize. Make sure you are you can have an easily accessible and efficient filing system that will save you hours in your work. It'll save you. This is an occupation where you take your job home. You take less of your job home, less of the literal job home with you if you can keep things organized and file them efficiently. And that's one of the biggest things where since I've acquired that skill and been working on it, it's saved me hours a week. If you don't know how to organize, ask somebody who's really good, who you know, look up some videos, find a class. Organization will save you your sanity.
Cool. Rebecca?
What Darian said, but also I would say find that teacher or that person on campus when you do get your job who you are comfortable with and who you can get best practices from. A filing system, yes, best practices for just even assessments that they use, or like the system to which they do their IEPs. And then you can tweak it to make it your own, but really not reinventing the wheel is very important. It saves you a lot of time. And then I know they're all SPED teachers, correct? Special education teachers. So the other thing is that, and I learned this, I went to school, went back after I had already done some other things, had some kids and other things in my life. But if I was to do it over again, I probably would add on my multiple subject and do the dual credential, because I wanted to teach summer school this year. I do math. I push into math. I teach math. I've taught a math intervention class in Clovis Unified, and I could not teach summer school because I didn't have the multiple subject credential that would have allowed me to teach math over summer, which is my comfort zone. And it's what I know, it's what I do. But there's certain things that will stop you. And I don't think it would have been that many more classes. So I got my master's right after getting my credential, which is a great thing to do. I think we all did. It was just 4 classes after you get your credential. So it's definitely worth it. And so that's one of my suggestions, is get the master's right away. It's 1 more year. You can work while doing it. And then also to look into maybe the dual credential.
Great. Harut, advice? Other than time management, which you mentioned earlier.
Let's go back to time management. No, I would say don't be so hard on yourself. I know Eric talked about we're all critical. Don't be so critical of yourself. I have kind of noticed that, going into the cohorts too, man, we're teachers are very critical, people, and of ourselves. And I'm the same way too. Man, I couldn't just bring myself down any lower that first year. But it is something that I feel like we do to ourselves because we really want to do the best. We really care. And I still talk myself down and I say, don't do this to yourself. It's fine. You got this. Try to think as positive as you can. You're going to go through those motions. It's going to happen. There's no need to bring yourself down. You're only going to make it worse on yourself. Just go through it. Don't be so hard on yourself. Value yourself. It's not an easy job, and there's a reason why we're so needed out there in the special ed world and just teaching in general. So value yourself too.
Great advice. All
Cheryl,
right.
can I add something real quick?
Of course.
I'll jump in. I know you guys are in the credential program or entering the credential program. Rely on your cohorts. You guys are in cohorts. I think Fresno State did that for a reason, because even now, with my cohorts, we've all kind of went in different districts. Some are in the Bay Area. We're all over the place. We still connect. We're like, hey, do you have a strategy for this? What are you doing in your classroom for that? And we are still emailing and texting each other for support. I think it kind of, that relationship continues. So don't lose touch with the people in your cohort, because we still depend on each other. We reach out and provide advice to one another all the time.
Great, thank you. Okay, a question from the audience. We mentioned the MA in SPED, and I think that Rebecca, you may have started that first, or Darian, but how has that helped you improve your teaching career in special education? Anybody?
I can speak to that one.
Thanks,
If
Darian.
you are even thinking about it and you have the time and are able to do it, absolutely do it. You will not waste your time in the classes. It's even more learning how to manage things, behavior, interventions. I actually got to spend a significant amount of time focusing on how to implement autism interventions and look at how those coincide with emotional disturbance, and kind of find out how I could benefit both populations in my classroom at the same time. And so it's just more opportunities to learn and to work with extremely wise and experienced professionals as well. Everybody in the Fresno State SPED program, I did not have a teacher who was in the SPED program who I did not enjoy. They're all wonderful people. They've been through what you've been through. There's a lot of empathy. There's a lot of support. If you have a question about something that's not gelling in your class, I used to ask Dr. Mahoney, for example, for his suggestions. And so again, you're furthering your education. It's helping you to be a better practitioner, and you're working with wonderful people who are there to support you because they want you to be the best you can be. So absolutely do it.
And asking for help. I'm teasing you, Darian, you mentioned it earlier. Eric, Rebecca, Harut, anything to add?
I went the same route. I took a year off before I went into the master's program, and but it was for life reasons. I would have continued right away. But the whole time that I did take off, Cheryl kept in contact with me. Dr. Garnett kept in contact. The university never left. That link was still there, right? And when I wrote my thesis, it was on how to increase parent satisfactions with IEPs. And for me as an educator now, I can better figure out how I can engage my families more. I can figure out how to put myself more in the parent perspective. Yes, I'm a parent with children with IEPs and special needs, but even more so, like, what can I do to further help my families advocate for themselves, and how to get them more involved in the IEP process. And my research really helped me open that lens. And so if you go into the master's program, find something that you're really passionate about, that you want to learn more about, so that way you can do more research about it, and apply it into your everyday practice. I joke around and said we're like doctors in some sense, special educators, because on that IEP, we are writing a prescription for service minutes. We're writing a prescription for what kind of services our students are getting, and academic services. And so we have to make sure we adequately diagnose our kids, right? As a doctor, as an educator, right? We, as a special educator especially, and we want to make sure that what we are saying and prescribing to our students in their IEPs, we can stand by and make sure that the families feel like they're included in the decision. And so really find something that you're passionate about, research about it, and just and go for it.
Awesome. All right. For any of you who wish to answer this question, sorry, I have to look at the large screen, folks, because I'm having a hard time seeing it. What are things that you learned as IAs? So Darian, I think that would be for you and Harut, that you took into your classroom, if anything, that was applicable. And how do you build rapport with your IAs now that you're a teacher?
Okay. Oh, that's a good one. So, things I learned as an IA. I think one of the nice things about that is I had a good grasp for certain evidence-based practices. So I kind of got a nice head start on some of that because I was working directly with teachers. It also provided a lot. Again, I had that non-traditional, I was already teacher of record as soon as we started the program kind of feel. And so it was an opportunity for me to learn a lot of the ins and outs, the paperwork. If I was curious about something, I would ask. Oh, hey, what's an IEP look like? Could I sit in on one sometime? And it provided me a lot of the experience that I ended up implementing when I did become a teacher. As far as building rapport with IAs as a teacher, speaking from experience, being an IA as well as working with the team, we have a 1-to-2 ratio here. So I work with a lot of adults in our classrooms, but acknowledging that they are adults is a big thing. Allowing them agency and or playing to their strengths when you can. But just again, and we're all a team. I may be the teacher in the classroom, but I'm not superhuman, and there are things I can't do as well as, say, one of our other paraprofessionals. Organization was a great example. And so just looking at it as a relationship that you can give and take from, and the fact that there is a synergy there, that they are there to support you. You have strengths and weaknesses that all complement each other. And so just acknowledging their agency and competence as adults is a great place to start.
Harut?
I mean, Darian really hit that one.
Okay, then you have to answer.
No, but I would say that having that experience, just being an IA and then becoming a teacher and having to work with so many IAs, I think knowing what it feels like to go through everything, knowing what it feels like to be told things in a certain way or be treated a certain way. IAs run the show. I mean, without IAs, we'd be drowning, honestly. So just knowing that they are very important, and unfortunately, IAs don't get told that enough and don't get to feel that enough, that they are very important. They're not easily replaceable. It is not an easy job. And Darian, yours, I'm sure, is even harder to find people who want to help out as much. And it's tough. It's not easy. And it takes a certain person to go in and do it. And I think caring for your IAs, talking to them, training them, making them feel like they can do the things that they're doing, building on that confidence. And I think just going through that, it helped me to become a better teacher, because you're working with so many adults. It's not just the kids, it's the people you're around, the admin, parents. So yeah, it helped out.
Yeah. You get a head start, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the questions that came in earlier, right, almost when we started, was how long did it take you to get the written documentation down? In other words, to get the hang of the IEPs. Anybody want to take that one?
I will, since I love paperwork, apparently. So I would suggest, and how long did it take to get it down? Well, I think it's ever changing. So I think even though I've been doing this for 3 years and my IEPs are legally defensible, and I've had 2 lawyers in with my IEPs and we're going through the whole thing. So I'm very confident in them. But what it is at the beginning, probably the first year, at least my first maybe 10 IEPs, I would have a second set of eyes look at it. I would have one of my co-teachers, one of my coworkers look at the IEP after I wrote it to make sure that I had filled in all the boxes, checked all the boxes. So it was probably my second year that I was a lot more confident in writing the IEPs and making sure, but still on those ones that are litigious and that the parents aren't as forgiving, I still will have my coworkers, or we'll do them together, or have them review them just to make sure that when we do get in that meeting, that there's not something that I forgot to do that could cause an issue. So it's always good, again, collaboration, work with your teachers. You're not an island. You want to work together, especially in the special ed department. I really depend on my coworkers and my program specialists. So the first 5, my program specialist, or I think it's Eric's REA, would review them. I would email them to her when I was done with them. She would review it, make sure that it was worded correctly or the way that there wouldn't be any confusion, and send back suggestions. And so that's really important. And then when there was a good one, she had an example of one, I would print it and then I would keep it with me. So as I was writing mine, I would make sure that my wording sounded the same way that the one that had been approved and that was a really good, well-written IEP. So I could use some of that verbiage.
Good. Panel, this question came in that's IEP related, so any of you could answer it. So I just started as a teacher and I have an IEP coming up soon. Is there a program or something you recommend to help with creating goals? And also, how do you have your IAs working with taking data? So you got an IEP question and a data collection. Anybody?
I would say, as far as writing IEPs and creating goals, the goals have to be one, it needs to be something that the student needs support in, right? Don't just create a goal just to create a goal for the sake of creating one. And then it has to be something that's a group effort. So I always include the families in that process, and the student if they're able to, right? Okay, let's figure out what we want to work on this year. What do we want to try to attain? If they have a previous IEP, I also look at that. I also look at what was written in their previous IEP and build off of that, right? Because the goal is for them to continue that stepping stone, not to regress. And so looking at the previous IEPs and how you can do that and continue their goals. I don't use a program per se. I don't know. I'm kind of a nerd and I love the Common Core companion book and the state standard books and that. And I usually say, okay, next grade level, this is what they're going to be teaching and this is what expected of them. All right, how can I figure out the scaffolds for that student for that next goal? And then from there, that's how I would write my goals, and then build the, the attainable measures of that goal according to making sure that the student can be successful, and what you can teach, because you don't want to make something unrealistic and you're gonna be like, oh, I have to do this trials 50 times because I wrote 50 in there, right? You want to make sure it's something that's reasonable that you're going to be able to do, but the students can also see success in that. Yes, there are goal banks. Yes, there are things that you can look at. Yes, you can look at previous IEPs, but you need to make sure that you design that goal specific for that student. The goal banks can give you an idea of how it's written, because the systems have that. And there's online programs that have these examples of goals, but you just have to be careful to not just copy and paste a goal, because then it's not catered to that student. And then as far as working with my IAs for tracking data, I have to teach them everything, right? Mm-hmm. So kind of going to the IA question earlier, like that, the instructional assistants are an extension of me. In the classroom, we are equals. The students see us as equals. And so I might be sitting back and taking data. My IA might be sitting back and taking data, but we're always constantly observing and watching our kids. And we might not be able to take data right then and there. We might have to do it in between passing period. But before I present them with a data tracking form for that student, I tell them why we're doing it, and I explain it very clearly. This is the purpose of this goal, of this data sheet. And that way they have an understanding of what to look for. Because if they don't know what they're taking data on, they're just going to start telling or writing whatever, right? So make sure that they understand exactly what you're looking for and how to record it. I'm all about Excel spreadsheets and charts and graphs. And so after that, I will either do it and show my IA how to input it into a spreadsheet, and then we blow it up on a graph, and I can take this to the IEP and say, here's the paperwork, here's all of the data we've taken, but here's a snapshot of it on a graph. And that way you can see the trends and see the patterns. And don't just give it to them and expect them to understand how to take the data. You really have to sit down and show them exactly what you're looking for, what you need, because there's so many different types of data tracking sheets out there. And I use multiple. Each kid might have a different type of data tracking sheet depending on what we're looking for and how we're going to track it.
Great, thank you. Panel, anybody? Anything to add?
Yeah. For those of you, I know we have people in all different levels of experience kind of looking into this. And so what Eric kind of building on what Eric was saying, you look for different things. So like if you're just doing straight tallies, that's a lot more frequency. So you're looking at how often a behavior occurs, but some things you want to look, if a behavior happens once, but it happens 20 minutes long, right? That one tally doesn't really tell you much. And so there are different forms based on what you're kind of looking for. And a lot of that too is going to come from your student's IEP. What is the big behavior or what are the things that we're looking out there for? And so that's going to sort of inform the data collection process. Some students, you're going to see a lot more frequency tracking. Some students, you're going to see a lot more of a duration tracking or latency tracking. How long between, this incident, and the behavior, how long is that taking? And so a lot of that changes from student to student. There are a lot of ways to do it. One of the nice things too is in the program, there you will get exposure to lots of those, what they look like. You'll have chances to figure out what's best for you, steal from teachers as well. And then whatever you don't like or whatever you think could be improved upon, improve it. We had a standard data tracking here that we used. I didn't like it. I modified it. I was very honest with our admin about it. And now mine is sort of the gold standard for our data collection here. And so again, just like with anything, what is, it is a guideline. You take what you like and you kind of tweak it to what's best for you, for your students, or even your IAs too. And so, some IAs are, sometimes people have different competencies. People are good at different things. And so somebody may have a really good eye for data tracking while the other is really good at being in the moment with the students and helping with the intervention. And you have to make sure, again, play to strengths. Don't be afraid to jump in it too. I'm currently, I'm data tracking for some of my students as well. It's all a balance. There are lots of different things but there are plenty of resources as well.
Team, I'm just going to give you the next question, but let's couch this in terms of not revealing, of course, who the student is, even though that's a hard thing to do. So the question is, have any of you had to go to court in regard to one of your students' IEPs, and how did that impact you? Is it a no?
I haven't had to go to court. I have had to be in a litigious IEP where the parent had her lawyer and we had our lawyer in the meeting. But I was able to diffuse the situation. I'm a communicator, so as long as you keep your parents informed of what's going on with their student, if you have to send emails on a weekly basis, to just let them know what's going on so there's no surprises. I was able to take a situation that had not been good for 3 or 4 years and started off on a really good foot in junior high, which is usually a scary time for parents. But the IEP was the most hours I've ever worked on one, going back and forth, because everything that I wrote, I had to get approved by the lawyer. And then she would send back, no, you have to address this exactly this way. And she would change my verbiage. And so I had to rewrite my IEP, multiple parts of it. I mean, I would get 8 pages back of notes on different sections that I had to change the verbiage on. And so by the time we had the meeting, there was 15 people in it, and it went very well, and we were able to avoid going back to court. So I haven't had to go to court. So I think that as long as a parent thinks and knows that you're on their child's side overall, like over no matter what, and being a parent as well, if you know that the person is on your child's side trying to do what's best for your child, they won't hold it against you, and they won't push you. But they get very defensive, like most parents do, if you're not treating their child with the respect or the care that they feel like you need to do. So a lot of the times it's just listening to what the parent wants and needs, and then going about it and speaking the way they can understand it instead of saying it exactly how you would normally say it. You have to figure out what works best with your parents, because you're coming at parents who have maybe had, especially in junior high, have had a long road with their kids advocating for them to try to get them special ed services. And I think those are the ones that end up going to court in my professional opinion, I guess, and you can avoid that. And sometimes you just can't avoid it, but a lot of the times you can diffuse situations.
And I would agree with you, having been in a court situation several times with students who were not my own. I was brought in to do some independent evaluation and also to try to do exactly what Rebecca said, which was to mediate the relationship between the parent and not just the special ed staff, but all of the staff. I will tell you that the key is, as Rebecca said, you try to diffuse situations before they happen, and you also stay calm. This is not about you. It's about the parents' concern for their kids. And that's a huge thing. You know, they're worried. They don't know that we're doing the right thing. The child doesn't need improvement. Whatever the reason is, it's not about you. So it's okay. All right. Okay, question. Have any of you, whenever I did that one, there's another one in the chat I saw, I think, that's live. Jody, is there one there that we need to take?
The only one is where can you find goal banks?
Okay.
So
yeah,
it's probably your own specific ones.
Okay, team. You kind of did that, Darian, but maybe.
Well, our system that we use SACE. I don't know what different systems that we use. I know SACE is used. So SACE has a, which is where you write your IEPs. It has a goal bank. You can make your own goal bank, but it has a goal bank, a teacher goal bank that is already embedded in SACE. So you can look it up by grade level. So it's math or writing or comprehension, and then, or reading, math, and writing. And then you can look up grade level standard. It basically does all goals on grade level standards. The other one that I use that Common Core app. Did you teach us that, Cheryl?
Yes.
So on your phone, it's Common Core. It's just Common Core app. And I use that all the time on my phone. And you can go grades 1 through 8, I guess. And then you just look up the subject, and it gives you all the standards and goals.
Haru, what about with your population? Do you do it any differently than Rebecca described or Darian described earlier?
Like Eric was saying, Darian, you said it also, just each individual student has their own goals, their needs, and you create one based off of that. But I will say that I do take data differently. I know Clovis Unified created an online data taking system, which is something that when I first became a teacher, I really didn't like doing the paper data anymore. It just felt like there's just so much paperwork, and then they just end up in boxes at the end of the year. And it got to a point where I was like, there needs to be an easier way, but also a cleaner way. And so thankfully for me, they had come up with this system. It's called DOTS. I don't know if any other district uses it, but it is based off of Clovis Unified's database. So they do have all the students' information. SACE's information kind of pops up, but you need to add a little bit. But anyway, it's been working for me. It's quick. We take data on, I set it up in a way where it's on like a whiteboard, but not, or a laminated sheet, and they can fill in the check marks and fill in the data, and then they take it to the computer at the end of the day, and then they fill it in. So I can print out a chart that comes up. It just generates it on its own. So it's just all the things that we want to do. It's right there, and I'm lucky that I have it. But I think it's kind of odd that I know majority of the teachers, probably like 80–90% of the teachers don't use it yet. I don't think it's as popular. And I think when we get comfortable with what we already do and what we already know, we don't really want to get out of it. But I think I convinced myself, let me do this right now while I'm a brand new teacher, or else I'm going to get stuck and I'm going to get used to something that I probably don't want to do. So that's why I did that. So now I'm strictly online with my data taking, and it's been working well. So if you can go online, do it, you guys. Start early, because I mean, we're going into a technological route anyway with everything, so go for it.
Thank you. And panelists all, a question was asked earlier, but I'm sorry to the person, I skipped it. What activities do you do to keep your kids engaged, or technology, or what are the key things that you kind of go back to that you love to keep the kids motivated to learn? Anybody?
This doesn't quite answer the question, because I don't know that I have one, this is the magic pill that keeps kids going, other than being enthusiastic about what you're doing with the kids. Honestly, I'd say that is the biggest, again, that will make or break your education career, no matter what setting you're working in. But that's the buy-in, is if you don't care about learning, kids can pick up on that. And so if you're trying to teach something and it's clear that you absolutely either don't know what's going on or you don't care about what you're teaching, there's no buy-in for the students. Again, if you don't enjoy it, why would they want to learn about it? And so I think one of the first things you can do is approach learning with enthusiasm. Usually with educators, that's not a big challenge. But again, if you do it with enthusiasm, that is your first selling point. I know it's not like a big, easy, use this, but again, enjoying learning is a great first step.
Good. Anybody else? Okay.
I agree with that. There is a lot of stuff that you can use, but it still doesn't make that impact if you don't put that effort into it. And Darian's right. You kind of have to sell it. You have to make it so that the kids do enjoy it, because it is how much of the effort that you put into it. And yeah, I totally agree with that.
Anybody? Okay, I have a quick last couple of things for you. Would y'all address confidentiality? Because I'm thinking that often people don't understand the extent to which we have to be confidential about our students who are receiving services. So anybody want to tackle that one?
Confidentiality needs to be confidential even in the classroom. And so I think that's one of the ones people miss, is I think there's a big keep it at school that people tend to understand. But even in the classroom, it can breach confidentiality to address the fact that a student is in special education with them. depending on circumstances. And then of course, just even talking about other students with staff in inappropriate settings in front of them. There are things that students don't need to know about each other. And part of that too is you being a filter as the educator and the person who kind of runs the IEP to kind of know what staff do and don't need to know. Do you need to, you can get to a point, you can talk about what impacts a student's behavior without going into the depths of it, the childhood trauma that informed it. Because when you start getting into that, you start playing in dangerous waters about what needs to be divulged. So there's definitely a balancing act. And as a teacher, you kind of have to be a filter.
Good, thank you. Anything to add?
Just be careful with the conversations you have. Sometimes it's easy to even talk with your IA in the classroom, like, hey, Jimmy, this, and this, but then other kids are in the classroom. So you have to be observant about what you share with your IA in class. So when you need to have those conversations, if you do have it with your IA so that they are prepared for that student's arrival in the morning, like if you have time, do it before the students arrive, right? Before other students are in the room. Paperwork. Sometimes, you print off an IEP, you read it, like if you're not going to use it, shred it, get rid of it. Don't use it as a scratch paper. I mean, it's the basic little things, but sometimes it's like, it's a quick and easy, let me scratch something on the back of a paper, and then it turns into a scratch paper into someone else's hands. The way if you save any documents on your computer, make sure you secure it. If you email documents, because sometimes, like for example, for me, like we have to email their IEP at glance to their general ed teachers and to other staff members on site, or behavior plans, and making sure that you're sending it and reminding the staff, like, hey, this is only for your eyes. Like, if you're going to print it, make sure you put it somewhere secure. In my room, I have locked cabinets everywhere, right? And so I have students' IEP binders, and when we pull it out, a student can add their work sample in there that they're proud of, and then we lock it back up, and it goes away. It's something that you just have to be very mindful of, where you're putting the keys, what you're saying around, how you even talk to other kids, right? Some kids are like, oh, Mr. Calderon, I want to be in your class, right? And they're maybe in my GE co-teach class, and I'm not going to say, oh, I only teach students with special needs. Like, I don't announce that. It's something they just see me as another teacher, right? And so you just have to be very mindful with all of that. Or who's riding the first student bus, right? And I just say, oh, all my bus riders, let's get in this line. They could be taking this regular school bus, they could be taking the first student bus. And so we don't differentiate because we want to make sure that we treat our students as any other student, and protect their identity and their confidence. They're entitled to that confidentiality, and we have to honor that.
And just to add, and talking about your students around your students, just know that they're always listening, they're aware, even if you don't think that they are, which you shouldn't think that way to begin with. People come in and they think, oh, it's an autism program, the kids aren't listening. Yes, they are. And it always hurts to hear people think that that's not happening. And it's just a reminder, you guys, kids are always aware, they're always listening, they have feelings, please don't forget that. And just be mindful of what you say, and be careful, and empathize, please.
All right, so to be considerate with your time, thank you so much. This hour and a half just flew by very much. But thank you every panelist for being here today. I really appreciate it. And thank you, Cheryl, for staying after, or actually before school starts pretty much, to moderate. And thank you for all the attendees. We had quite a few students here. And once again, I highly appreciate you spending time to help our current students become better teachers.
Hear, hear. Applause to you. You guys are wonderful. Thank you, Jody.
You're welcome. Thank you, everyone.